Jamie Mahlberg, 25A. She is running to be the House rep in 25A, basically the district northwest and west of Rochester. And she's kind enough to join us and talk about her campaign. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's start off with exactly who is Jamie Mahlberg.
Well, Jamie Mahlberg is at the heart an educator. I've been teaching at Rochester Community and Technical College since 2007. I moved to Minnesota for my job at RCTC. And so at the heart of what I do and what my values are, it's education. But I was raised in a blue-collar union family in Dubuque, Iowa, and just distinctly remember lessons from my mother, who wasn't encouraged in a lot of her opportunities that she wanted to pursue, that I could do whatever I wanted. And so when I went on to college and finished my education, I was really only able to do that because of access to financial aid to help me pay for it when my family certainly couldn't. So I worked really hard, accumulated a little bit of debt, finished school, and landed my dream job at RCTC, where really I'm fortunate every day to create an environment where anyone who walks through my classroom door can achieve their goals. So when I moved to Rochester in 2007, I met my husband, Ryan, when he was living near his family farm over in Worthington, Minnesota. So I married a good farm boy from Southwest Minnesota, and here we still are.
Wow. What a woman from Iowa moves to Minnesota and marries a guy on a farm. That is not... That's nothing. Although I will give this Dubuque. That's a nice town. I've enjoyed that, but I imagine it was nice to get away from that one big hill.
You know, it really was. You know, it's nice to sled down in the winter, but walking back up it is not as fun.
And considering winter, when it does get winter, that's a fun ride. That's something that you will meet your maker on that hill.
Yep.
So you all of a sudden one day say to yourself, because it sounds like you've got yourself a great life, and you've come here, you found your husband, you're teaching, you got a great job, but then all of a sudden something happened. Why did you decide to run for 25A?
Well, back in 2016 broke my heart, really. The election outcome, seeing how closely Minnesota could have gone a different way. And I honestly, if you had asked me before that election if politics was ever in my future, I probably would have laughed in your face. But I honestly, up through my whole life, I've been taught, and I believe that government should be used to make people's lives better. I understand that investing in a state or a nation means investing in the state or nation's people. So really, after 2016, I was baffled when I started seeing all of my current elected representatives at a lot of different levels advancing this purely partisan agenda that doesn't really improve people's lives. I don't think that that's the way we need to be going. I believe that we should be cultivating and investing in opportunities for everybody. The reason I became an educator at a community college, and really that's the reason I'm running for office.
Jamie Mahlberg is joining us, 25A, Democrat of the Day for today. Jamie, when we talk about issues here that you are interested in, you actually have, all politics is local. And you truly have a local issue, which is one of your top priorities, and that's US 14, which runs west of Rochester through your district there. That's a road that's, like many outstate roads, is a road that is, because of Republicans and the way they treat transportation finance, has not gotten the upgrades it needs to sustain the traffic that's on it, correct?
Correct.
All right. Talk a little bit about it, because, this is more than just your district. You talk about, there's trucks that are going by. There's other districts, neighboring districts as well, that are impacted dramatically by the fact that the Republicans have failed to help rural Minnesota, which is what they say is their base. They have failed to help them when it comes to a major thoroughfare, a major artery for business in southern Minnesota.
Yeah, and, when I look at this, too, I think how many years does it take to get this done? Highway 14, as you know, it's the major corridor of commerce in southeast Minnesota. We run from Rochester to Mankato out to New Ulm, and this is one of the last strips that's not done yet. It's still 2-lane. Every crossing is on level with the road. There's a lot of commerce along that road. There's an ethanol plant out there, so the heavy truck traffic is really heavy on that strip of road. My husband actually drove to Mankato from Rochester for a year to work, and I can't even tell you the number of mornings that I woke up because he didn't text me right when he got to Mankato, letting me know that he had made it, that people die on that road every year. So when I'm talking to folks in Dodge Center and in Byron and in Caston and Manorville. That's one of the top priorities that they have. And so it's frustrating that it's taken this long to get that strip from Owatonna to Dodge Center completed so that we can safely travel along this really heavily traveled route between a lot of our towns.
It's amazing to me because that road was in bad shape back when my friends were going to college in the late 80s. They still haven't upgraded it. And as you talked about ethanol, one of the things which is we are not hoping for any kind of massive tragedy, but unfortunately for the Republicans, for them to take a public works project like this seriously, generally you have to have a major tragedy, and then they say, well, I guess we have to fix it. As opposed to, generally sometimes you'll find one stretch is finished because there's a major contributor to their campaign that was there, so they put it in the pork bill. But there really is a short-sighted nature here to this because we should not have a situation where it's done in piecemeal, it's done to where it's not safe, and we only get this done when there's a tragedy.
Right. I agree 100%. And I mean, there have been tragedies. Every death, every accident on that road is a tragedy, and they happen every year. And it's just becoming more and more vital that we get this project done. As you think of all the people now also that are coming into Rochester and commuting from further and further away as Destination Medical Center expands and the job needs in Rochester become more heightened, there's just more and more people on that strip of road. So it's not going to get more safe. It's just going to get less safe with the increased traffic. And frankly, it needed to be done years ago. It needs to be done. That would be a number one priority. If it's not included in this bonding money this year, that it just needs to be done. We need to advocate for the people in Southeast Minnesota who are traveling that strip of road and get that done.
Well,
all the corridors of commerce fund. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and the eastern part, as you say, is the eastern part of 25A is becoming very suburban Rochester, and you don't put a substandard road in a major corridor like that. I mean, it stymies business development, it stymies safety, and also building as far as homes and communities. People are not going to go out there. It's like, why would I take my time and money as a developer and go build something out there when the road is at no point is looking like it's going to be able to get fixed?
Yeah, one of the things we're really focusing on is just strengthening all of the infrastructure that we have in this region, and really the public transit and the roads is priority number one in that area, just to make sure that people can get safely to and from where they live and where they work. It's needed to be done.
And a reminder, too, Republicans for years have said that this is what they're concerned about is outstate Minnesota, but they have not delivered for outstate Minnesota, not in any capacity. Right. Jamie Mahlberg is once again joining us, Democrat of the Day, 25A. What other issues are you focusing on in this district? What are you hearing from the constituents down there, what they want to have addressed?
As an educator myself, I hear a lot of education. People are really focused on education in this district. We have wonderful public schools. People in our communities take real pride in the quality of our public schools, and so it's been frustrating for a lot of people to see just stagnant and decreasing, quite frankly, funding for our public schools, not only our K-12 infrastructure, but even in higher education. You look at a lot of the buildings in Minnesota State system, and they're just crumbling. The building I work in at RCTC, we tweeted out a picture a couple of months ago when the snow started melting, and there's water literally dripping into the building from the ceiling because we're not getting funding to keep our buildings updated. And so when we're really feeling prideful about our public schools, we need to make sure that we're funding those schools at every level so that we can retain the quality teachers and educators that we have and professionals that make those buildings great places to send your kids to school. So I'm hearing a lot about education and making sure that funding is equitable and fair, and really is just keeping pace at the very least with inflation, so that those schools keep the programs that they have to serve our students.
Well, and there's also, when you talk about failure to upgrade the roads, this has also been another area where there's been the fuzzy math sort of thing, as you say. It's like people will say, well, do we really need to upgrade the schools and have a budget for each school district annually? Yeah, you kind of do, because projects come on up. But conservative education policy, especially when it comes to funding the building and the facilities that we have, whether it's K-12, pre-K, or post-high school education, they they basically have used that as a hot potato and said, oh, well, it's good enough. And the reality is, I mean, we've had decades of Republicans kicking the can down the road. And
Mhm.
right now, I mean, as you said, you're not the only schools I've heard about. There are a lot of
Mhm.
schools, not in the inner cities, not here. I mean, although those schools are
Mhm.
having problems, but a lot of schools in outstate Minnesota where they haven't
Yeah.
had major remodeling, refunding, fixing of problems. Everything's put together with
Mhm.
band-aids and prayers, and it's been that way for 20 years.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many wonderful programs that our schools offer. For example, out in at Triton, they have a wonderful performing arts program out there, and there's a lot of talk about cutting back on that program because there's just not the funding to keep the facilities up to date and to keep the personnel involved to keep those programs going. And it's such a point of pride when I talk to folks in Dodge Center about that performing arts program and how frustrating it is to see it on the chopping block year after year. Because the funding's not there, and I think what people need to really kind of think about is when the state cuts funding, we still need to pay the basic amount of money to keep these schools functional. And a lot of times that gets kicked out to our smaller communities with a referendum that may or may not pass. And so somebody's paying for the schools. And so we need to make sure that that funding is, that the state is really committed to funding our schools and funding education because really the students coming through Minnesota education is the future of Minnesota and
Uh,
making sure that they're here and feeling good about staying here.
No, absolutely. You're in 25A. I mean, being right outside of Rochester, I'm presuming this is, I mean, the knowledge of medicine and the need for quality medical care, I imagine
Yes.
is a major issue, especially when you're seeing people. Well, once again, the big difference between the last major election and this election is your insurance is likely a lot worse thanks to Republicans,
Hmm.
whether that's here on the state level or on the federal level. Talk about some
Hmm.
of the healthcare issues that you've come across in your district.
Well, we do live next door to the best hospital in the country, but
Yes.
too many of our neighbors are, like you said, are unable to access the health care that they need, not only the physical health care, the mental health care that they need. And so when I'm talking to folks, the cost of health care, especially for our rural communities, is really, really burdening families. It's difficult to crawl out of medical expense debt. And so a lot of people are really concerned about how are they going to afford their premiums and how are they going to be able to access the care. And even for those who might be able to afford the care, they don't have access, especially to the mental health care that is so important for everyone, but especially in our rural communities. A lot of that health care is centralized in Rochester. And so that having that necessary, again, traveling on 14 to get into Rochester to access this care. And so people are really interested in just any option that would be available. And I would be committed to exploring any solution that provides universal health care, including access to mental health care for every family in Minnesota, whether that starts as a Minnesota Care buy-in and growing from there. But that's really on people's minds for sure.
And you can't deny. I mean, as you brought up mental health care, the failures by the Republican leadership to deal with a problem which people have been saying, hey, this is the funding for this area is grossly inadequate. We need to have more funding, better facilities. They've completely ignored those pleas, and we're really starting to see the downsides of our inaction in the state.
Hmm. I mean, and again, like you said earlier, we have to wait for another crisis. What kind of tragedy do we need to wait for? What is going to be tragic enough to get to motivate people to fund these programs and to fund the infrastructure that we need to provide that essential mental health care for folks. I teach psychology, and so oftentimes I hear stories of students and of just community members who are, they want to be successful in their lives. They want to be able to work and care for their families and just be healthy and happy where they are. And it's just that preventing issue of, not being able to care for their mental health is really what's hurting people and holding people back. So that is needing to be done for sure.
Jamie Mahlberg, 25A. I imagine now that the weather has gotten quite nice, that you are getting the door knocking and the volunteers are needed as well as donations, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we were out. We've been on the doors here. We were out today in Byron. We were out over the weekend in Dodge Center. We got a little rained on today, but nothing we couldn't overcome. So it's been great being out talking to folks.
You know, I say this every time I've talked to a Democrat of the day since we started this new season of this. And here's what I'm going to repeat what I've said. Help your local Democrat. By all means, help your local campaigns. But if you really want to have the blue wave, if you really want to have, Kurt Daupt be the minority leader, which would be brilliant, you need to get on out and this summer pick 5 Democrats across the state, 5 of them, and go volunteer, help out in their district. Jamie is 25A. This is just right down by Rochester. A great place for you to head on down just south of the Twin Cities. You can get in there, help out, do some door knocking, or make a donation to help Jamie come in to the St. Paul and into the house there. We'd love to have you there. JamieForHouse.com, JAMIE forhouse.com. That's the website, correct?
Correct.
All
yep.
right. And you are also pretty much linked on all social media, so you can find Jamie Mahlberg out everywhere. She's got a great presence out there, and she's a fantastic candidate for 25A. Jamie, I really appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Jamie Mahlberg, 25A. Let's spotlight that one. Democrat of the day for today, 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Apparently, Randy in Coon Rapids is going to call back in. He wants to talk about how great Trump is. Can't wait. It's the Matt McNeil Show on AM 950.